How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com. And your favorite show hosts are still.
Fenurian.
And Willisell and Ari seems to be lacking some gunpowder. That rather
Considering
placid
he showed up
opening.
less than a minute ago.
Yeah, so I've been very, very tired this week, and today, for some reason, I just thought that the show was at daylight time and forgot that we're back on standard time. We switched weeks ago, but I was still thinking in my head, oh, it's at 10:30, and we got plenty of notes in there, so I guess I'll pop in about 45 minutes, an hour before. No. It's already 11 minutes afterwards.
Daylight savings is a lie by the lizard people.
I wish we would get rid of it. I hate daylight savings time so much.
It is such a pain and serves no real purpose anymore.
Yeah, I feel like people would resist it though, because those are the sorts of petty, meaningless things that don't need to be retained that people resist change to. Yeah, as opposed to destruction of the norms of society, they're fine with that. Daylight savings time changing, no, we don't want that to change.
Yeah.
I don't hear anybody even bring it up here. Nobody's even attempted to remove it.
You can hear my cough is still following me around. But
yes.
if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter, or you can join us in our Discord server, which you can easily access by clicking on the link attached to the show description of the show archive.
Yes, indeed. And on the stream today, I'm going to be playing a bit of City of Heroes. Because that actually is what my week has been.
You've been a hero? Or you've been playing City of Heroes?
City of Heroes.
Okay.
So, I figured... I just figured at one point earlier in the week, I might just duck in and have a quick look and see what they've done and how the whole private server project is going. That is in no way endorsed by NCSoft. Gigantic wink.
It's been endorsed in the sense that they haven't received a humongous cease and desist order.
Yeah, although there are murmurs that they've apparently been working alongside NCSoft kind of behind the scenes to sort through the spaghetti code.
They've been working with people who worked on City of Heroes. They have not been working with business entity NCSoft.
I gotta love plausible deniability. So, yeah, since it's been going for, how long has it been? About a year now. And they've made some massive improvements. When we first looked at it, there was some severe hiccups with how the game performed with lag and things like that. Those are mostly sorted out now. I think I've only had one occasion where the lag has really kicked in badly. And with all that sorted out, the new team is making improvements to the game. They've already added a couple of new power sets, or adapted them rather. They haven't added too much in the way of actual new content. The new power sets that they have added are either adaptations just moved across from one archetype to another, or they've been made using existing assets. There's only a handful of things which use new assets at the moment. But beyond that, they're also doing a bit of rebalancing. They just did a massive pass on some of the really bad power sets and things that just didn't work properly before, although there's still got a ways to go. And also they're starting to add in actual new features, like asymmetrical costumes are now a thing. So that's admittedly been my week. I sat down and I figured I'd play it for half an hour, see how it all is, and that'll give me something to talk about on the show. And then I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole of making new characters every 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, you can make a character in 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, you can if you mash your face on the random button.
I get stuck in character creation for like hours.
Yeah. So my current character is a Beastmaster Electric Mastermind, who is a wizard dog, because, why not? But I haven't actually dusted off my original mains power set, which I believe was a Gravity Electric Dominator. From memory. That was so long ago, though. That was 15 years ago now. No, maybe longer. Back from when the game was still original and you actually had to buy separate subscriptions for heroes and villains.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was what put me off the game to begin with. Yeah, before it went free to play.
Yeah, though by today's standards, doing that, most people wouldn't bat an eye to it anymore.
I don't know. I think there's something about the framing of that would actually prompt resistance. Although,
Maybe.
to be honest, there aren't that many people who actually run a traditional subscription model anymore.
Yeah, it's either buy your way in and microtransactions out the arse, or free to play and microtransactions out the arse.
Yeah, you're not going to get away from those microtransactions.
Yeah, but it was a unique way they did it, because originally it was City of Heroes and City of Villains were two separate games and two separate MMOs that overlapped. But so you'd end up doing PvP between the two, and you can go to Pocket D and socialize and all that. Speaking of, I haven't actually been to Pocket D in a while, and that's probably a good thing.
I have no comment. I wasn't playing during that era.
Yeah, Pocket D was like Goldshire in.
Like Goldshire and Moonguard.
Yeah, it could get that way. What mission am I up to? Okay, I just gotta go hand in. So yeah, I think they've actually started putting out no major issue patches, as they used to call them. An issue was a major patch, usually add new content, new mechanics, and more often than not, new powers. They're doing it in smaller issues, so methods. So you got issue 24, page 1 is the one that just came out, and that's what added in the rebalances and asymmetrical costumes. So if you want to check out the game, there's a new launcher for it. You don't go through Tequila anymore, but if you just slap City of Heroes Homecoming into Google, it will come up, or into your preferred non-censorious search engine. Beyond that, my week has been fairly quiet. I did sit down and end up watching Cells at Work Black. And, oh boy, what a tone shift.
You didn't have any flashbacks, did you?
Not as such.
To terrible jobs you've had to work in the past.
Oh, I think we've all had those, but none of them involve wallowing through cholesterol and not getting killed on a daily basis. So yeah, whereas the original Cells at Work, I think we mentioned it last week, is very bright, colourful, and generally positive. You watch Cells at Work Black, and you already know right from episode 1 how this series is going to end.
I feel like the series is meant to make you feel guilty about leading a degenerate lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it is. Like, all these cells are suffering, they're miserable.
This is actually a scheme by the Japanese government in order to encourage better habits.
If you don't live a good and healthy life, then all your cells will be miserable, broken people. Except for one disturbingly upbeat red blood cell who is slowly getting torn down. So yeah, it is a massive shift. Like, everything is grim and depressing. Things don't always end up happily. Like, I think season 1 of the original Cells at Work ended with severe head trauma, and that had a happy ending. Also, if you watch the dub, very silly accents on the infused bloods. So that's the thing.
I did not watch the dub, so
yeah,
I don't know.
I accidentally
brought
up the dub and couldn't be bothered changing it. So, yeah, but like, you've got all these episodes, things about adult health issues like smoking and drinking and how that all works. And then out of nowhere, well, not quite out of nowhere, an episode about boners.
Yeah, and then an episode about fighting off the clap.
Yeah. And then the newest episode, which came out, I think, last night, is about hair loss. which worked rather in parallel with the original Cells of Work episode, which is all about how hair works. So you watch that, and then you watch the Black episode, where suddenly it's all the killer T cells rampaging through the hair follicles, murdering everybody. So yeah, it's a bit of a shift. What else did I watch this week? I can't honestly think of too much else. Although I did watch a couple of episodes of Isekai Quartet again, just for the giggles of it. And it doesn't cease being a very silly show. I do, however, I think I appreciate Pandora's actor in that even more, now that I've watched Overlord. Like, if you watch it without context, Pandora's actor is this ridiculous, hammy fruitcake of a character, and you think, okay, he's obviously exaggerated from his main series.
No, he's not. But I guess I've seen it without context, so I sort of took for granted Pandora's actor's position as Momon's great shame.
Yeah. And he is. Good lord, is he. So, yeah, there is nothing exaggerated about that character. He is just as much of a Fruit Loop in the original series. That said, though, I don't know if I actually liked Overlord.
Well, there's not really anything special about it. There's no particular reason to like it.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like there was any particular reason to dislike it either. I've watched it through it a couple of times, but it's in my category of stuff that's sort of like watchable junk food.
Yeah, it's like there's all this wind up and things are kind of moving and events happen, but taken as a whole, nothing happens.
Yeah, well, at the end of it, they're sort of on the brink of world war.
Yeah.
But nothing has actually happened yet.
Yeah.
Like the status quo hasn't changed, other than, a few key characters getting killed.
Yes, and there's that whole divergence into lizard men nonsense as well, which is kind of
Yeah, but the whole thing feels like it's an exercise in sort of self-indulgent world building.
Yeah.
Rather than telling an actual story.
And
there is an actual story because the books apparently continue on, but it's not been animated. They've managed to make 3 seasons worth of
nothing,
not a whole lot
basically.
happening.
Yeah. What I'm, I think, more annoyed about the whole Lizardman is like 4 episodes of Lizardman stuff, and it seems like it's built up just to have one joke, and then the whole thing's dropped.
I can only assume they must bring it back later to have some meaning, or it was set up for something that's going to happen later.
Presumably, yeah, but it looked like the whole thing was set up just for Ainz to accidentally look in on 2 lizard men bonking. And that was the entire thing.
The whole framing of the thing is like, oh well, this is sort of our test tube case for conquering another race.
Yes.
As a model for what's going to happen going forward. But again, that's sort of an excuse to not actually move the status quo at all.
Yes. So the only real change is Ainz now apparently has lizardmen in his castle crypt thing. So I don't know. I just
there's no antagonist. That's the problem. That's the ultimate problem, is that series doesn't have an antagonist.
Yeah, I think they want to try and set Ainz up to be the antagonist, or at least...
Well, there's no protagonist then.
There's no protagonist. There's nothing really pushing back
Either way you frame it, there's not actually a conflict. There's just there's friction, but there's not actually a flashpoint of conflict.
Yeah, you get Ainz doing stuff, and then maybe the various heroes or things around the place doing stuff. And Ainz actually doesn't really do a whole lot. It seems like it's the Guardians just kind of pushing Ainz to do whatever their current agenda is. And Ainz just tends to go along with it. So, yeah, for a isekai power fantasy, it's not... Yeah, I'm not sure on it, honestly. Like, there's spectacle there, if you want that. But that's about it. So anyway, I'm going to leave my work. I wish I could leave my work there. I'll leave my week there, and I'm just gonna go and beat up some bad guys and throw dogs at them because I can.
It's not a very civil use of a dog.
Not at all. Even if they're magic dogs. Actually, are they magic dogs? I
Especially
don't
if they're
know.
magic dogs.
But I electrocute them to heal. There's that too.
That's not how dogs work, is it?
That's not how
I mean,
electricity works
you
either.
would know more about dogs than I do, but I was under the impression you can't fix a dog by electrocuting it.
No, you generally cannot. But, superpowers. Also, I'm going to cover this guy in bees. There we go.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, you can tell
feel-
some power sets were exclusively villains only.
honestly, I feel like superheroes as a whole, it's really time for them to take a back seat for a while, like culturally,
Yeah.
because I think that they've become very culturally toxic in a way. It's sort of Marvel movies are the equivalent of isekai anime,
Yes, very much
in
so.
that they are basically strangulating that culture, that media culture.
Yeah.
Like, yes, Iron Man was good,
Yes.
but it was good. How old's Iron Man?
Iron Man
I don't wanna
3
know the
was
answer.
not.
No,
I
it
think
was
that
not.
the Iron Man, what makes Iron Man good is that it wasn't made in a context where there was this whole other setting, universe thing. It was
Yeah,
this story tells the story of Iron Man and it stands on its own quite well.
Yeah.
And they did not reboot it and try and tell it again like they did with Spider-Man, and they didn't
3 times.
deliberately set it up to be a lengthy series the way they did with the Avengers and with Thor and that, although Thor was a functional reboot as well.
Yeah.
But that movie, I think it stands out in my mind because of its independence from everything else. Like, you don't need any of that corollary information whatsoever to make Iron Man 1 work.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
what they call the first wave Marvel movies work like that.
yeah. And the first wave hit and miss, but
Yes, you got some
And-
good ones, you got some bad ones in there.
man, Iron Man shot off a Superman, or not Superman, a superhero popularity spike, and they had the perfect opportunity. If Disney was intelligent and thought in the long term and how they could make a whole lot of money, they would have used the last Avengers movie to put the franchise on ice, send everything into development and planning for a while, and give us a 5 or 6 year break before they come out the gate swinging with something much better. But no, we're still gonna ride this all the way until it dies now.
Yeah, I
and
think that
nobody will
would've
want to
been-
see a superhero ever again.
Yeah, I think that would have been the better way to do it. Like, maybe cap off with the Spider-Man movie that was already in development, but that's it.
I think that Hollywood needs to tell different stories, and since Hollywood isn't capable of telling different stories, somebody needs to tell different stories.
Hollywood
stories
has
that
5
aren't
stories.
just that somebody needs to start producing media that is not just the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, I think
And-
a lot of that is hot. Oh, go ahead.
I really do think that there's a strong parallel here to the isekai genre and the way that it's sort of infected everything in seasonal anime, and it's devolved into repeating the same story over and over again. And if anything, it's even more unforgivable for movies because basically that entire thing is under the direction of 1 or 2 studios.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the other thing with Hollywood type movies and the trendsetters on this type of thing. Unlike Isekai, the entire California Hollywood movie industry is so incestuous and just the same batches of people working between different companies that they probably have just run out of ideas at this point.
Oh, they definitely have. They ran out of ideas maybe 10, 20 years ago.
It's
Yeah.
been more a case of how can we repackage this idea in a way that will make us some more money.
Yeah.
It's not really oh, I've got this great new idea and I need to put that on the screen.
Yeah, which is why I think that the Marvel movie thing kind of happened so well is because the whole giant universe structure thing was new. And then, DC tried to do it and made absolute garbage. But, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the
It's,
first gasp of original thinking out of Hollywood in decades.
I think that DC's failure is not just their, writing and directorial incompetence, although that's a big factor. I think it's the fact that they are the first direct copy of the implementation of that MCU idea.
Mm-hmm.
They are the first obviously derivative case. They don't have the groundwork of having developed that movie deployment concept themselves. They're
Yep.
just copying what somebody else has done, and it makes everything look worse than it would otherwise.
Yeah, admittedly, also, I've got to put it down to the stable of characters the DC has. Their characters just aren't as good, as compelling as Marvel.
I think they probably have characters that are.
Yes.
Most of those are probably B and C listers as far as heroes go, and
their villains are much better.
Most of their frontline stuff, I think, those characters have moved further into sort of being cultural icons in a way than the Marvel equivalents. Like, people still see the likes of Iron Man and Spider-Man and the Hulk as characters, but Superman and Batman are archetypes now.
Yes.
They're not characters anymore.
Nobody wanted to do anything cool with Batman since the whatever the movie with Bane was in that series.
Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight series.
Which is why you got the Joker.
And he's probably the best frontliner they have.
Oh yeah.
But they just keep screwing it up with Batman because they just keep retelling the same story over and over again.
I think everything that has been done with Batman that can be at the moment.
Yeah, and
there's also sort of the cultural noose, though, is evident in the Joker, because we've had two extremely good deployments of that character in recent times. The Heath Ledger Joker, which is an extremely good implementation of Joker, and the more recent one in the movie focused on Joker. And let's pretend that the other one, the Joaquin Phoenix one or whatever it was, never existed because that was creepy.
That happened?
No, it didn't.
Okay, good.
So we've had two really strong implementations of the Joker, two very different but strong implementations of that character in very recent history. And what was the Hollywood and critical reaction to the second one?
That one got infected immediately by, I don't know if it was Hollywood that infected it, the people that are in that circle, or if it was just the general community of the Twitterati.
No, it was definitely both. It's hard to tell which one was taking cues from the other, but they both reacted the same way. Because remember that movie, The Joker, that Joker movie,
it's a right-wing movie now, according to them.
Well, it's not a right-wing movie in the sense that it took a political compass test and became a right-wing movie, but it was made by a dissenter. Because remember, the guy that wrote it was a comedian. And he wrote that Joker movie because he was hacked off that comedy was impossible because of the environment which had been generated in the entertainment industry, the censorious environment, the cancel culture environment.
You go watch a comedy special on Netflix, and as long as it's not like someone like Dave Chappelle or something like that, Dave Chappelle, Gabriel Iglesias, and no, that's about it. Anyone other than those two.
People who have FU money. The people who have FU money, they can say what they want.
Yeah. But everything beyond those two, I think, is completely unwatchable as far as stand-up specials.
No. Yeah, because it's like the famous take on this is that they're telling jokes for applause, not for laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go watch any blue-collar comedy tour video with Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Engvall, and all of them, and they ain't the funniest comedians in the world, but it's a billion times better than what we got now.
Yeah.
Because none of their crap is political. It's mostly regional humor, but they don't go out of their way to exclude a group of the population immediately.
And they've also spent 4 years reading about Trump, so now they're out of practice.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
But, so I think that the Joker shows that even though you can go off reservation, there is a faction of people who hold the purse strings functionally that they hold the purse strings as far as the people who do the production deals are concerned, not as far as the viewership is concerned, because Joker did gangbusters. But there is that faction of people who are not willing to permit you to go off reservation and be successful. They desperately tried to strangle that Joker movie. The Joker movie did great, but they aren't going to make another movie of that type. Because all of the people involved in making the call to go ahead or to kill the idea, those people are all afraid of their reputation being damaged.
Yeah, no studio will pick up a pitch from that director again after this.
Here we are, Joker, Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see.
Well, the Rotten Tomatoes issue is another problem.
Yeah,
with
Rotten
the
Tomatoes
media
is a
industry.
completely different issue. But they've got it as 68% critic score, 88% audience score.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes is indicative of a much bigger problem with Western movies in general, and that critics and the public are looking for two totally different things in how they rate something. The critics don't give a crap how good the movie is. They don't care how much fun they had. They don't care that it's memorable or that it's a genuinely good movie. They care how woke it is.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is that that's also true for the people that make entertainment. They also don't care if people like it anymore. Why do you think there is another season of Batwoman?
Oh, I don't doubt it.
No, there is. Like, it started just now.
Yeah,
Except that she's now black. Like, there's no justification for that. That whole series, it already had 2 seasons, I think. I'm not quite sure about that. It might only have 1. But regardless of how many it's already had, it's still crashed and burned. Nobody watches that show.
It's a shame.
There is nobody woke enough to like it.
It's a shame actually, because Batwoman is one of the few characters who has a really interesting arc in the DC.
They have.
She gets interesting after she gets. Batwoman gets interesting after she gets shot in the spine.
Yeah, like she's generic,
and she's not Batwoman anymore.
No, she becomes.
Is
Oracle.
that the one that becomes Oracle? Yeah.
Yeah.
And just basically sits processing data.
She's just the Tropington capital of female sidekick or female spin-off sidekick, and then the laughing game happens.
You mean the Killing Joke?
Killing Joke, sorry.
Isn't Killing Joke also considered to be culturally verboten?
Probably.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a big debacle about that? About how it was some sort of evil misogynist tract?
The only people that follow comic books that like it are the aficionados that have been around for a while, the old hats. Everybody knew or hates the Killing Joke because of woke points. Basically because Barbara Gordon gets shot and becomes Oracle.
But she's at her best when she's Oracle. She's got the most interesting story at that point.
It's not about that though. It's about you can't do anything to a woman. Like recently, there was an interesting short, about 10-minute video done by Critical Drinker. If you've watched any of his videos, on the issue with heroes nowadays, superheroes nowadays, and ultimately it is due to feminism that has caused the degeneration of heroic characters. For the quick summary is basically you can't have any scene where a female gets hurt. Therefore, you can't have a real female villain get defeated by a male hero. So you're going to kill the conflict there, and you can't have a female hero ever struggle. So they have no arc because they can't afford to be defeated by a male on screen. And so the entire hero thing ends up falling apart.
Yeah,
and it's all the wokeness has caused this to happen, but it's also caused like a degeneration due to disuse of imagination amongst people producing media. Like they have curated their club of people who are allowed to produce entertainment to exclude anybody who have any ideas worth listening to.
Yeah.
And
How did we end up talking about this exactly?
I don't know. I think we're on your week.
Oh right, yeah.
So right, your week, please, sir.
My week was
this week.
there's another crisis of staffing at work, so I worked several 10-hour days. When I say 10-hour days, that's 10 paid hours. It's more like 11 hours at work. So I was brutally exhausted by the end of each day and didn't really do much of anything. Didn't play PSO2. Like the patch came out and it's like, oh, there's all this new stuff and all these free 15-star weapons you can get and the new quests and so on. I was like, I don't have the energy for this. I just don't. I don't have the energy for anything. Didn't even manage to make much progress on the Prisma Codes rerun either. Didn't manage to pull anything good off the gacha. I only threw tickets at it because I'm currently hoarding tickets for my next big attempt to get a 5-star. Although, judging by how many it cost me last time. Anyway, that was rough. So I'm going to be continuing to push forward with that. This rerun of Prisma Codes is one of the only opportunities anybody will have to get Miyu, and thankfully I don't care if I get Miyu or not, because Miyu is bad. Like, really bad. Her kit doesn't synergize with itself or with anybody else. It's really, she's got a really, really bad version of Garden of Avalon for her Noble Phantasm, which it comes with like a massive HP debuff and that sort of thing. Like, she's an awful character. I don't know why you would make a servant this awful. I don't know what was going on in that design team.
You know, aside from Angry Mango.
Well, Angry Mango is sort of a meme.
Yeah.
Like, there's a good reason for Angry Mango to be terrible, but it doesn't even make, like, every part of Miyu's design doesn't make sense. Every part doesn't make sense, right down to her star rating, because she's a 4-star. That doesn't make sense, partly because the whole point of Miyu is that she is another Ilya.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's supposed to, in her world, she fulfills the role of Ilya. It's not the Irnsburns that were creating the Grail. She was a sort of a wish-granting device cultivated by another clan, because the Irnsburns weren't involved in that, in her universe. But she is basically the same product. And she is sort of as powerful as Ilya in most ways, because she's meant to be Ilya's counterpart. She's meant to be the other half, the other user of the Collider Sticks. They're supposed to be equivalent, and yet they are not equivalent in gameplay terms. One is the Miyu is like a star rating lower. She's got a mostly offensive kit with a support Noble Phantasm and no synergy. She's an atrocious servant mechanically across the board. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. On the Japanese side, however, Ushi has finally gotten her animation update.
And
so
it
that's
looks
another
really good.
That's another meme put to rest. Yeah, they are really over the top animations. So they're better than a lot of the 5-stars. A lot of 5-stars are inferior to her new set of animations. They're absolutely gorgeous.
Come to think of it, how many servants actually still use that original stock set that came with, version 1 of the game?
There are a few. I think Marie still does. Matahari still does.
Does anyone actually use Matahari, though?
A lot of people use her out of love.
Out of boobs, you mean?
But
They use her out of
same
lust.
thing.
There you go.
Well, she's sort of a hard luck character, the way she's portrayed in the Fate universe. But she's a lot of people who grail her to 100. But yeah, so Ushi has gotten her update, and it's very nice, and Ushi has a lot of fans, and they've been calling for an update. And so this is, each time one of these things happens, it's like another meme has been put to rest. Like, the most recent meme that got put to rest was Muramasa was finally released. And
Okay.
Muramasa was a meme because he's a servant which uses the body of the young Shiro as opposed to Archer. Except that he's an old man and has a real old man personality. And so he's always talking about the youngins and the old days and that sort of thing. Like, his personality is an absolute opposite of Shiro, who is sort of like a naive, wide-eyed idealist. And
kind of idiot,
Muramasa's
yes.
just sort of like a grouchy old man. But he's also ridiculously powerful servant, like really, really effective servant. I would put him in the power creep category along with the likes of Castoria. Like, him coming out with Castoria also existing basically makes like Muramasa Castoria or Muramasa Castoria Tamamo like ideal farming comps. I think he's a bit over the edge. Their power creep has been accelerating lately, which worries me. But also Benkei also got a animation update. It's not quite as flamboyant as Ushi's, but still pretty significant. But despite this, nobody's still going to use Benkei.
I honestly forgot he was in the game.
Most people do because his noble phantasm is just so bad. There's just not really a reason to use them. Like his noble phantasm has like chance to stun. He's like a 2-star, and
Something like that,
so you can count on him to be NP level 5 as a result. But at NP level 5, it's still 80% chance to stun. It does no damage. It purges enemy buffs, which can be useful, but not useful enough without damage attached to it. Like the main reason people use Amakusa is because he purges buffs, but he also does damage and he's also class agnostic. And it also inflicts curse, but like with most characters that use curse, it's a trivial damage. At 500%, it does 5,000 per turn, which is good, but when are you going to get Benkei to 5,000%? That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to live that long. But he does have an animation update, so I'm sure he has a fan somewhere who will be really happy that Benkei now has a animation update and some cool attacks. And honestly, his animations do look quite good, and they are quite fitting for him. But that noble phantasm is still an atrocity. Like I think even like Kiyohime has stun as well on her noble phantasm. I don't think it's quite as much because it's her main point is doing Zerka damage, but yeah, her overcharge is her stun is on the overcharge rather than the noble phantasm, so it's 50% at 100, 80% at 500. But she also does burn and she also does a ton of damage. So yeah, I feel bad for Benkei, but not that bad because he's kind of an idiot, as you get to see in the Babylonia anime if you watch it.
He's a whack-a-mole.
They don't really have a whack-a-mole scene in Babylonia anime, but Fern, you should really watch it. I think it's a really fun series if you can get over the fact that the protagonist is inevitably cardboard.
And the camera is permanently stuck up various asses.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it sells,
It's kind of what they do.
People pay money for Ushi and Rin's crotch.
Yeah. That they do.
Well, I like the sort of the scale of the sort of fight scenes. There's very little of the traditional servant dueling that is what you expect in most of these sorts of stories. It's a lot more like very large scale, gigantic opponents and gigantic fights type of situations, which are quite fun. But yeah, like I said, it has the aforementioned protagonist problem, which is sort of sad because the protagonist characters, depending on which manga adaptations you read, which singularities are being adapted, sometimes it's the male and sometimes it's the female protagonist. But in the manga versions, they have a very vivid character of their own, as opposed to being carefully flattened out the way it is in the anime. And it's just sort of sad because it just shows it doesn't need to be that way, but it is. I guess they're afraid of alienating people.
Dare I ask which manga?
No, not that one. Not that one. Not learning with manga.
Yeah, learning with manga, they do also have very fleshed out personalities, and they're both horribly degenerate.
That's special. That's definitely special.
Yes, Gudeo belongs in jail.
Yes, probably yes. Ushi also has, an Avenger form basically, Taira no Kagekyo, who I'm sort of hazy on the story here because it's a Japanese event, so I don't know the story and I'll have to wait 2 years to see it. But approximately based on the chatter I've seen about it, while it's not named Ushi and not named for Ushi, and it's not even named for Yoshitsune necessarily. It looks exactly like her, because basically I think that she's like the embodiment of hating the Genji, and so it just so happens that Ushi is the host for the sort of embodiment of hating the Genji this time, because that was also something that was characteristic of her in life. Although, it's only a she in Fate because this is Fate. But because it is that character, it still has the wardrobe choices.
You mean lack of wardrobe
Lack of
choices?
them, yes.
Well,
Lack of a wardrobe period choices.
arguably, stage 2 of Avenger Ushi is the single most heavily clothed individual in Fate.
It's
It's
probably
like they're
how-
trying to wear. It's like they're trying to wear a kimono and a full set of samurai armor at the same time. You're
Considering
covering
how
everything
grandiosely
except your
some
face.
characters dress. That's yeah.
But by the time stage 3 comes along, there's none of that.
It's all gone.
I will call these up if I can get my computer to actually cooperate for once. That would be nice. That'd be really helpful. And I'll show you what I mean if my computer will behave in the show chat. In the live show chat. Okay. Stage 2 is that's not really what I'm looking for, is it? Let's try this.
Oh, here we go.
Stage 2.
Found it.
And stage 3.
It's all gone.
Yeah, there you go.
All gone.
Although she
So,
does keep
yeah.
the boots, which is pretty typical for Fate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there you have it. Anyway, what else did I do? I think I watched a couple of additional anime that I hadn't been able to report on last week, but I'm trying to remember if I did, and if I did, what they were. Because a lot of them are not super awesomely great this season, or at least there's a strong undercurrent of following through on the same old. I haven't really watched anything that really breaks from any things that have been laid down in the past as yet. But I don't have time to watch as many as I used to. People may recall I used to watch literally a couple dozen per season, a couple dozen different anime per season. I just don't have that sort of time anymore. There's pretty much no way that I could do that, even if I had the motivation. There's literally not enough time left in the day. What other additional ones did I look at? Okay, so I watched LBX Girls, and I can't recommend this.
Okay.
Because it is exactly the same as half a dozen other shows over the past couple of years. It's just basically, in this case, it's an isekai combined with the Mecha Musume trope.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots and lots and lots of these series. I don't know what makes them so popular, but there are lots of them that have come out over the past sort of half decade or so, where it's basically the world is sort of post-apocalyptic or mid-apocalyptic due to invasion of various creatures, giant monsters, kaiju we'll call them for the sake of putting a handle on it.
Yeah.
And the only people that can fight them are obviously teenage girls wearing various equipment, depending on the setting. And there are so many of these shows. This one just happens to be that exact trope again, except in this case, it's a girl that has been isekai'd.
Just to add an extra layer of redundancy to it, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, so this show is, for instance, directly parallel to one from last season, and I'm trying to call the title to mind, but I can't. But there's I just finished watching a series that is almost the exact same last season, and then new season, same as the old season.
Yeah.
It's not. Why do you do this? Why do you guys do this? In fact, I finished watching 2 shows last season. Here we go. Assault Lily Bouquet, which is basically there are giant monsters invading. Teenage girls have to save the world, and they train to use giant swords and stuff and magic to fight these giant creatures. And the entire thing is basically a transparently thin Yuri thing.
Because you got to have your Yuri.
Yeah. And the other one was Warlords of Sigdrifa,
That sounds familiar.
which is the same thing again. There are giant monsters invading, and the only ones that can save are teenage girls. In this case, they have been given supernatural sort of ace piloting skills to fly World War One, World War Two aircraft, which have been supernaturally empowered to oppose these aliens
Yeah.
or whatever they are. At least this one had an interesting twist at the end, in that it wasn't they weren't like aliens or anything at all in the end. Like, this is spoilers for a series nobody will watch because it's not worth watching. But ultimately, it turned out that the god Odin was the one that had empowered the girls to become Valkyries and fight these enemies beyond imagining. But it turned out that it was just that Odin was the only god left alive after Ragnarok. In the same way in FGO, in Lost Belt 2, Skadi was the only god left alive after Ragnarok, and it sort of drove her around the bend. In this case, Odin was the only one left after Ragnarok, and it drove him around the bend. And so he tried to basically restage Ragnarok, and the whole debacle with all of the aliens invading and whatnot was just to give him an excuse to help humanity by appointing Valkyries who would then die, end up in his service as Einherjar, and he could relitigate Ragnarok all over again.
But
Which is, but it's already over. Ragnarok already happened, and he can't actually go back and fix it. But it's because he was in absolute abject denial that the age of the gods was over, and was trying to basically, relive his old glories
by re-performing the event that killed everyone.
Yeah, except this time he was going to win. But there is no giants to fight anymore.
No, and there's no gods
like I
to
said,
fight.
Yeah, he was the only one left, and it drove him around the bend, basically.
So a neat twist on an otherwise completely cardboard story.
Yeah, it's the same series repeated over and over again. There was one the season before that, and one the season before that. They always do this series, and this one has not shown any sign of being remotely imaginative at all.
Yeah, there's a few others like that. Like you got the bog standard isekais in there still. I think I will watch maybe a little bit of the spider one. But
I haven't been able to get a handle on it.
Apparently, it's slime time, except she's a spider.
Yeah, the big difference between Slime Time and the spider one is that Rimuru starts off superpowered, effectively. But that's not strictly true. He starts off with the capacity to become superpowered, and technically speaking, in the most technical sense, probably the main character of the spider one does as well. The thing is that in the spider one, she does start off as a normal bug, a small lesser pterodactyl, as I mentioned last time.
Yeah.
So she is prey to everything around her, unlike Rimuru, who only has to eat the right things and he will quickly become very powerful. In this case, the main character has to grind the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But
I think Rimuru's big deal is, like, slimes in that universe have the capacity, but not the intelligence.
Yeah. But because he's got this extra boon of having life experience and reasoning capability that he can apply to circumstances, he can bend the rules and turn himself into a monstrosity. But not so for the spider girl. She's just a girl in a spider's body, a large. It seems like it's very, very hard to get scale. Is something that I found in that show. Very hard to get scale, but I feel like her as a spider, she's sort of roughly the size of a very large dog.
Okay.
Or a very small pony. Like a Great Dane or something.
All right.
But I don't know. I've never actually seen a Great Dane in real life, so I don't know how big they are. The largest dog I've ever seen was a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Okay.
Which was large enough that I could probably ride it.
Maybe 2.5 foot at the shoulder, maybe 3 foot.
At any rate, she's a large spider. She's not like a regular bug, but it's hard to tell because there are very she lives in caves surrounded by various other monsters, and there are very rarely humans on screen to compare her with, and usually she's running away from them. So it's hard to tell how big she actually is. The other weird thing about that series is that, like I mentioned last week, the entire class got isekai'd by means of death, and as far as you can tell, by means of death.
And because you were very vague about the method and just said a catastrophe, until I'm proven otherwise, I'm going to think of it as the Truck-kun family reunion.
I mean, it could be, for all I know.
Oh, okay.
But,
they leave it that vague.
I had a brief impression of the color green, and then everybody was dead.
Green Truck-kun.
Yeah, they were in class at the time. It would have to be a very aggressive Truck-kun. But
You've seen Stranger.
It's a Truck-kun apiece.
Because let's not do this right now. But because the whole class have been isekai'd, they're also involved in the story. But that means that rather than, the daily life of Spider-Girl, they spend a lot of time focusing on the other members of the class. The big problem with that, is that the rest of the class is going through Isekai 101. Like they've reincarnated as in their new world, and they're now attending like academy for the elite to become heroes, sort of thing, and having encounters. And one guy is clearly starting to pick up the protagonist flag, and so on and so forth. And it's very like that story thread that's taking place on B-side, so to speak, from Spider-Girl, who is living in the cave and hasn't met them yet. That story is very, very paint by numbers. Like, I'm sure that they're eventually going to try and weave these two together, and there's some capacity to change circumstances by doing so. But that story that you're inevitably going to be forced to watch is very dull. Very dull. Because it's the same thing you've seen over and over again. Speaking of ridiculously overpowered protagonists, I also watched one called... it's another light novel title.
Oh, I think I might know that one.
Suppose a kid from the last dungeon boonies moved to a starter town.
Yes, that was the name. I watched a bit of this one too.
So basically the story here is that it takes place in generic JRPG Fantasyland, which has gone through generic JRPG fantasy story many, many times in the past. So by the time the hero makes it to the final dungeon and beats the Demon Lord, he's basically maladapted for society, which is something I'm sure I've seen. I'm sure I've seen a story about that before somewhere, about how once you reach a certain level of power, you can't really live in the real world anymore.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
But basically this is what happens, and the solution over the course of years that was found was that the heroes would pretty much settle around the Demon King's castle, and they form a small village. But the small village basically ends up being eugenics central, since everybody who moves in there is too powerful to live in the real world with normal people. And so you've basically got all of the last zone enemies that are going to be like level 90 surrounding a small village populated by basically the cream of humanity, who have been interbreeding with each other and new examples of the cream of humanity for generations, and their children are brought up surrounded by the most horrifying of beasts. But they think it's normal because they've never been anywhere else.
Yes.
And so basically the story is about this kid who's the runt of the litter. He's barely capable of getting by in his village, and he mainly does the cooking and cleaning because he can't go on adventures. He only knows that he's weak because compared to everything he knows, he is. And so he decides that he's got to set out and make a career for himself and join the army. And so he goes to what is essentially the starter town in JRPG land to enlist in the army. And basically the story comprises the experience of a kid who has no common sense for the real world, because the world he grew up in is one where everything is made out of rock, and he's living in a world made out of tissue paper now. But he doesn't know it, and the reactions of people around him fail to inform him of this fact because they can't understand what they're seeing either. Yes. So yeah, basically everybody ends up at some point or another viewing this guy as some kind of antagonist, because there's no way that somebody this powerful could possibly be doing things this slowly. But in his mind, he's got no self-confidence whatsoever. He's weak and he's terrible, and he even fails the entrance exam to the military academy because he wrote his answers in ancient runic script,
Yes.
which is like the language of raw power, setting him apart from virtually everybody else on the planet. But
the examiner had no idea what he was looking at.
yeah. But yeah, so it's another story of a very, very well-worn type, but it's fairly good-natured about it. So
Mhm.
it hasn't exhausted my patience yet. So I'll probably keep watching it for the time being.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll stick with it for a long time. Like, I get the impression it might want to be a comedy, but it's plays too many things too straight.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what it's doing. Even its comedy beats are pretty well-worn.
Yeah.
Like the village elder who looks like a little girl and whatnot. Like every single one of those jokes has been done before.
I kind of groan every time she turns up.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel like she exists basically to be fetish fuel.
Yeah.
There was no other real reason to make that character other than that.
And that's the entire reason she exists.
Yeah, like if you compare her to another character in that mold of like the really old youthful looking girl, like take Milim from Slime Time. Like Milim is a character constructed to create a radical dissonance between her appearance and her behavior and her power.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this character, you never really see her use her power to do anything but create awkward situations.
Yeah, she's basically a giant troll.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so what else did I watch? I watched the opening of the new season of Log Horizon.
Ah.
So
Database.
while there are parts in the books that I have read that have not been animated, the story seems to be picking up after that because most of the latter books that I've read in English of Log Horizon are side stories, so to speak, which is not strictly true, but they're happening elsewhere. They're not happening in Akiba, which is the central focus of the story. They're usually happening over on the China server.
Okay.
But so it's mainly the most recent book that I have. I haven't checked to see if they've released any new English ones for a while now. But the most recent book that I have is basically this is what's happening to Krusty after he gets sort of isekai'd within the isekai off to the other server. But yeah, so basically this is it looks like they're going down the route of this is why socialism is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Is the general story, because there are hints of this in the first season from Ainz, the guild leader of Honesty.
Yes, not that Ainz.
No, not that Ainz. But it's basically seems like he's fixing to collapse the government of Akiba, and the reason is socialism. Like that seems to ultimately be it, because basically the Round Table is pretty much the incarnation of small government, in the sense that there is a small number of people involved, and they are technically responsible for administration, but they basically the only things that they do most of the time is they buy out all the zones. They basically the taxes are used to buy out all the zones so that nobody can buy them and put them in private hands and exploit people by doing so. And the only times that they actually even implement plans is if they have a unanimous vote. Majority is not sufficient. So they're a government that does very little, and mostly the adventurers just get on with their own lives and do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
The Round Table's only involved when a war is about to start, basically. Ainz is not very happy about this, because while one of the Round Table's earliest projects was to arrange training so that all the Lobby characters that got caught up in the catastrophe are able to level up quickly enough that they can get along in the world without difficulty and aren't threatened by most of the stuff in the major zones, they succeeded in that and got everybody around to level 50, 60, and then sort of said, okay, so it's job done now. You guys have to figure out what you're going to do with your lives until we can work out how to get people home. And Ainz was not content with this because a lot of them didn't really feel like doing anything and just bummed around. And they basically his guild has gone around absorbing all of the small guilds, the disintegrated guilds, and the drifters, and he's basically seems to be convinced that the main reason that they aren't contributing to society is because they aren't wealthy enough. They don't have enough possessions, and that people who do have possessions, their wealth should be expropriated across the entire population in order to put everybody on the same playing field so that everybody can contribute to society.
What?
But everybody else basically sees this as an attempt at state-mandated robbery and never cooperates with his idea, and he's basically getting more and more frustrated and eventually is just going to leave the round table. But his method of procuring the authority to affect his agenda is basically to ally with the most suspicious characters and enemies of Akiba, who are willing to give him the power that he wants because it will serve their ends.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, ultimately, this seems to be the story of socialism ruins everything.
Yeah.
Which is very much a continuation of what I saw in the earlier part of the story, because Ainz always advocated for this, that you can just solve the problem of people who have dropped out of society by giving them enough money, and we'll just have to take that money from people who've got money.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
That's how he sees it, though. He's pretty much the socialist in that you solve problems with money, and the way you get money is by taking it from the people that have it, because nobody is entitled to their own wealth. People are entitled to have the equal amount of everything. So,
but where did the people that have money get the money? From the money tree, obviously.
This is the thing, though. Like, he actually has a better fig leaf than a real socialist does, because this is a group of people who were all caught up in an isekai, and while they all did earn their wealth, that wealth didn't have any meaning before because it was in a video game. And now it's not in a video game, and you've got people who are sitting on enormous piles of gold, and people who were new to the game but got caught up in it by no fault of their own and are sort of stranded, and people who were playing the game in a different way, never needing to really accrue huge amounts of wealth because that wasn't their thing. And also there's a clear demonstration of Ainz's inability to understand economics as well, because he tries to go after one of the trade guilds. I can't remember what they're called, Shopping Street 8 or something like that, and say, you guys just opened a huge new branch in Maihama. There's no way you guys don't have wealth. And the guild leader tries to explain, that's not wealth, that's money that's invested in assets under a business that we don't actually even control. It was financed by individuals within the guild to put together a business in another city, and that's not liquid cash. We can't give that to anybody. It's a building that people own. And Ainz just doesn't understand. It's like, no, you guys bought all the stuff that means you're sitting on a huge pile of gold, and we need to give that to poor people.
Oh dear.
So it's like, it really is a delightful greatest hits of socialists don't understand how money works in reality. But yeah, so it's, in other words, it's basically carrying on with Log Horizon as usual. Like, what is actually the politics of nation building? When you put all these people in one place that have conflicting aims, can you actually make them hang together? And what are the elements that are going to cause society to fall apart? So yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I've always enjoyed Log Horizon, so that's nothing new.
Yeah. I think to go back to the start of Log Horizon, so I've forgotten where I was.
Yeah. I recently bought the whole thing on Blu-ray, so I'll probably go back through it again before too long. But yeah, I don't think I've got anything else to talk about right now, so we'll call it good there.
We should probably take a break then.
Yep, here's some music, folks. We'll be right back after some tunes. And we're back.
Yes.
So we were on the end of All's Week, I think.
Yeah. I suppose the last thing to say is that I was watching Gura play Skyrim, and now I want to play Skyrim. So I'm attempting to work out how to set up mods these days, and it's very confusing because now there are what I am sure are very user-friendly tools, except that I don't know how to use them.
Yeah. The Vortex is the new system from Nexus Mods now, as opposed to their old, rather janky mod manager. And
Do they
it's-
not just put them on the Steam Community Hub?
No, a lot of the stuff you can't put onto Steam for
Yeah.
various reasons.
Yeah, well, like my go-to example is that the best body mods for improving the textures and models all have a nude mode attached,
Hmm.
so they can't go on Steam.
Oh.
So even though I always play with the underwear switched on, I still can't get that mod.
Yeah, there's also kind of a limit on the complexity of mods that can go onto Steam. Like some of them, if they need a special installation path or method or anything like that, so if the launcher has to do something special, then you can't put it through Steam either. Which
I
means
see.
while you can put the script extender in via Steam and it will work, some mods just won't properly work via that. And then there's just a good amount of mod authors who won't put it on Steam for principle.
Oh. I guess keeping their stuff independent would be kind of important for the Bethesda mods, so that Bethesda doesn't try and take a cut of it or something silly.
There's the in-game Bethesda mod manager as well, which nobody in their right mind uses.
Yep.
Although if you're on console, then that is actually the easiest way to do it. Don't try and play mods on consoles. Just use the PC, like a civilized person.
Never play any game popular for its mods on console.
Nah. It ends up putting a whole lot more hurdles in the way between you and your moddy fun times. And a lot of stuff just doesn't work on consoles.
If it even allows it at all.
If it allows it at all, yeah.
Though basically the only game company that's well known for its mod community right now, aside from the open source or the Steam stuff, is Bethesda games, because Bethesda games are so broke you need to mod them to fix them.
In a lot of cases, yeah. Like, Skyrim is still a good game, but good grief, it's everywhere. But that's always been the Bethesda game's strength, is the modding community.
Yep. So yeah. You got anything else, Paul?
No, just that it doesn't just work.
No, it does not. I can spend hours sitting there and banging away to get mods working on Skyrim or Fallout or whatever I feel like playing. Actually, there's a giant story mod that's been released for Fallout New Vegas fairly recently I want to play. That game has not aged well, admittedly. It looks like butts.
I see.
But it is still an excellent Fallout game.
All right. Well, I guess we can blitz through my week real quick, because there ain't that much to it.
And we got a lot of stuff to get through and not a whole lot of time to do it.
So this week was mostly spent dealing with a whole lot of city regulations that have come up at work.
Oh, joy.
So that's been fun. But it's actually been helpful. This is a case where the government being stupid has actually gotten me more money, because it forces more people to buy more junk from me. Stuff like more cities installing mandatory elevators at the or pumps at the bottom of their elevators that will never ever turn on in case. No, they're there in case of flooding. But you would think completely landlocked areas and parts of the state that are dry as desert wouldn't have these before.
I thought you had a tiny sliver of coastline in Georgia.
Yeah, we do, but there's parts of the state that are inland and just don't get very much rain and are not in danger of a hurricane or ever flooding. But for some reason, these counties have all decided after the inauguration, they're going to go, oh, well, we need to put in all these new regulations.
That's probably because when the areas were surveyed, they were found to have a 1 in 100 year flood rating. So yeah, there will be a flood eventually.
But will it happen at a point where it'll hurt your business buildings to such a point their elevators get flooded? I don't think so.
Well, yes, that's what those flood ratings are.
So I doubt it. But anyway, I've been putting up with that, and there's been other regulations that have changed safety stuff about removing stuff with sewage. And so I've been having to get caught up on all these and deal with all the customers that suddenly have need for small things to meet these new codes. So I had a massive amount of orders this week, but they were all for small crap. So I'll take it. It's better than nothing, but it's making things a mess, and it's also going to make people more reluctant to start new buildings, which is what I need them to do to get my business back up. I need people to be building stuff, otherwise my business flatlines.
I feel sorry for the people who've already gone through the certification process, because they're going to have to go back and get their pumps re-engineered.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing recertified.
Mm-hmm. So that's been fun. And there's one work story that's related to gaming that I wanted to talk about this week. So on Friday, I think, I was finished pretty early. There wasn't a whole lot going on Friday. And so I'm getting ready to leave at about 1 o'clock. And my younger cousin, he's 18, walks in, and he explains to me that his Switch is broken, and he had asked me about it before, and I told him his fan was busted, and it was. And he asked me to help him fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, bless his heart, he tried so hard. But he couldn't even get the back case off. And I don't think this is entirely his fault. And the only reason I can come up with for why this would have happened, because he had the screwdrivers for the Switch's case that were the right size and shape. But he got these big stainless steel screwdrivers and these almost plastic aluminum alloy type screws.
They're very small and very soft.
Yeah, they're very easy to strip. And he had stripped every single one of these bare.
You'd think he would have stopped after the first one.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking. But they were all completely stripped. I managed to get one out by cutting a small head with a Dremel in the top and twisting it with a flat head. But the other ones were gone. There was no salvaging these. I just needed to get them out of the hole. So, after many attempts of everything from wrapping a rubber band around the head of a screwdriver and trying to get it with friction to not super gluing, but just gluing the stupid screwdriver to the screw, nothing was working. So I borrowed the opossum's drill and drilled the smallest hole possible right down the middle of the screw. My intention when doing this was to drill a hole only through the screw and then stick a needle down there or something down there. It wound up being a needle with a very thin rubber band wrapped around it enough times where a light tap of a rubber mallet got it into the hole. And then use a needle nose pliers as torque to twist the screws out. This idea mostly worked, but the screws were practically disintegrated for two of them, and one of them I'm fairly certain was cracked, and the threads were unusable.
Yeah, they would have been.
So it managed to work somehow. But got the back of the case off, and by now the opossum had been interested in what I was doing because I was messing with his kid's $300 video game console with a drill in my hand, and he was starting to freak out a little bit. And so I walked him through how everything connects there, and I had to look up a stupid diagram of how to unlatch the little flaps that connect components to the motherboard on those things. Because in these itty-bitty Nintendo Switches, the latch is almost invisible and uber tiny. So I had to get creative with a toothpick to flip those things. And got his fan ripped out, which was in that thing because these things are so small and compact. Like all these new compact devices is why I hate working on them.
Yes.
It was locked in there with like wonky rubber gaskets and junk that the thing just clipped onto. But eventually I got it out, and he had already bought another fan to replace it and put in the new fan. And for some reason, they had goo-gobbed thermal paste on this thing, like that video we used to make fun of for computer repair.
Oh, where he just slathered it.
Yeah, the machine apparently had a glob of it at its section when it was coming through, or the worker that was working on this model at the sweatshop just goo-gobbed it on there. So I had to get isopropyl alcohol and clean all that out and put it all back together and show it to him. Like, okay, this should work just fine. And I put it back together just right and duct taped the cover back to it because the screws that held the cover in place are dead. And nothing will fit in those holes anymore.
No, you need to get the specific size screw again, and even
And
then, maybe.
and aside from messing up his SD card slot a little bit with the drill, I think, and making that the metal underneath it bulge so his SD card slot pokes up a bit, everything seems to work fine.
Okay.
So, and he only uses it for playing inside his device. It's just it was overheating and the fan was cutting off.
Yeah.
And I looked inside of it, and I don't know if it was that thermal paste or something else, but some kind of gunk had gotten in the fan and just completely clogged it. And you can't clean that fan
No.
from the outside of it.
No.
It's not happening.
It's got a grill over it, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's impossible to get to that fan.
Yeah.
And it's got the heat sink on top of the fan that runs and locks the fan into place, so you have to remove the entire heat sink
Oh, joy.
to get to it.
Yeah.
And that's what worried me, because of all those tiny latches that connect components. I'm like, okay, I'm afraid to undo some of these because these are so tiny and fragile that I'm scared pushing stuff back in. I'll press too hard and bend a pin.
Yeah. And after the end of this story, now all I can think about is that god-awful assemble your computer video.
Yeah, that's
I thought it was great comedy.
It was fantastic comedy, but it was painful.
it was not supposed
Unbelievably
to be comedy, but oh man, that guy's dumb.
You idiot! Put your processor in.
How are you supposed? Are you supposed to be able to turn those screws, or are they actually designed to basically melt if you try and take them off?
I think that's designed to melt.
Yeah, it was the only thing I can come up with is if they were so much softer than his stainless steel screwdriver that the head just stripped it.
Yeah. It's kind of the thing now is companies don't want you messing around in the gubbins of their devices.
If you were to try and use a screwdriver which is a softer metal than that, though, it would just destroy the screwdriver instead.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why that they make them. Well, I know why they make them that cheaply, because it's cheap.
Exactly. You'll probably find that when they're actually refurbished, the screws will get screwed out and replaced.
Yeah.
Or drilled
They
out,
will.
rather.
Yeah, they likely have a tool
No,
for removing those things.
No, I'd say they'd probably obliterate them completely somehow.
Yeah.
But
The
Oh,
the
I don't know,
removal
maybe-
process will be destructive.
maybe they like spray them with Freon or something before trying to to
Yeah.
take them out. I don't know. I'm just thinking about like how do you actually work with screws like that? What is the purpose?
I don't know. All the guides online that I looked up once I was almost at the end of the process looking for those latches, at the very first step was be very careful with these screw heads. They're incredibly soft and will strip really easily.
Would have liked to know that earlier.
Yeah, like one guy recommended putting some kind of cloth on the tip of your screwdriver.
Mm.
I didn't read it further because I was way past that point. I was just looking for a diagram of where the latches were.
Yeah. Anyway, we
But,
have... Actually, how's your week?
That's pretty much the real world stuff that happened. Video games were just PSO2 and continuing my journey back through Monster Hunter International. I'm
Nice.
finished back through Siege. I still have the book with Julie and the baby and Mr. Trash Bags.
Are you going to go and read the infamous trilogy?
Oh yeah, I'm halfway through it.
Oh boy.
So every time I revisit this trilogy of books, I am still flabbergasted by just how much of a Mary Sue Oliver Chadwick Gardenier is.
It
Like-
is...
Every time you say that name, it makes me think that it was entirely intentional and was a send up.
Oh, it clearly, I think it was, because it's weird. It's most of the regular everyday monster hunting doesn't happen in the main series. You get it through the short story compilation and the memoir series, which is Oliver's book
like-
series.
You mean like the books are mainly about catastrophes and the sort of the punch clock day job monster hunting is in side stories.
Yes.
Yeah, and Monster Hunter Memoirs, the first one, Grunge, is just Oliver's journey of becoming a monster hunter and doing his day job. It's just a list of cases that he had to solve, or help resolve. So, and it's so weird. The dude. So, how can I explain Oliver? Oliver is a super conservative man who is conservative because his crazy hippie liberal mother did child abuse level things to him by just being a crazy hippie liberal mother in the
These
most
days
extreme sense of the world.
Should be right at home on Twitter.
Yeah, she dragged him off to protest rallies when he was really young. She wouldn't let him play sports when he wanted to. All that kind of fun stuff. So he joins the Marines to just a spider, and the whole time he's growing up, because she tells him to be more average and not stand out, he gets straight C's and through all school intentionally, a perfect C average. And so he joins the Marines, and he shows his real aptitude, and they send him off to Beirut in the time of Reagan's presidency. And the Beirut bombing happens, and he dies. And he gets sent back by St. Peter to accomplish a great mission. And he's gifted with everything in the world that he could ever need to be a great monster hunter.
Yeah.
This sounds like one of those. This does sound like one of those parody stories.
He kind of got
Yeah.
isekai into his own life, admittedly.
Yeah, he comes back and he realizes his natural talent for the gift of languages and tongues, and he can understand languages after just a week of study. And he's super smart, and he's already trained in the military, and all his wounds don't seem to bother him from the Beirut bombing. And then he discovers an obsession with Japanese culture and gets a sword and can do just as well with his sword Monokin, the sword of morning, just as much as all the other hunters can with all their specialized guns. But he's also great with guns, and he's able to hit precisely with an Uzi.
Yeah, nobody can do that.
No, nobody can hit anything with an Uzi. It's sort of like one of my friends knows a guy who did military service in Germany, and as part of I think he's part of an armored division, and one of their standard sidearms is the Uzi. And the Uzi was generally viewed, like an Uzi with the safety off, was generally viewed by soldiers as being somewhat like a grenade with the pin pulled.
Just don't want to be anywhere near it when you start firing it.
Like, if you need to clear a tank and you're out of grenades, you can open the top hatch, take the safety off on your Uzi, and just drop it in.
Yeah, but for Chad, it's fine. You see,
because he's special.
Yeah, Chad's special. He customized his Uzi. His foster shop teacher dad that he went to after his parents were terrible to him showed him how to customize guns and stuff. So he totally customized that Uzi. And then Chad gets into Japanese culture and takes up the way of the sword. And he takes Monokin around and can cut vampires' heads off and stuff. And, oh, by the way, he can sleep with literally any woman he wants to.
Literally any woman.
And he can partake of any style of Christianity and somehow see it as correct.
Yeah, that's a bit confusing.
Yeah, it's very theological stuff there, but none of it makes any sense. He is, in fact, being stupid if he were a real person, but even in the Monster Hunter universe, he's not a real person. He's a Mary Sue. And so it chronicles his adventures first in Seattle, which I guess when that book was written was like not even 2010 probably. So it's not the Seattle we know today. And then his follow-up one is in New Orleans, and that one's more interesting because it's more about an area that just knows monsters exist. Like, all of New Orleans, during his time in New Orleans, just knew monsters existed at that time. And just everybody knew Hoodoo Squad, his team he gets assigned to. Like, even the local street thugs. And the MCB are actually cooperative because there was no point hiding it from anybody down there.
Yeah, even normal people just know that, yeah, okay, this is happening now.
Yeah, the last one is not very memorable, except for the last chapter, which finally covers the dang Christmas party that's hinted at in the main series over and over again.
The main point of the entire trilogy is just to get around to that.
Yeah, but you have to sit through the adventures of Oliver Chadwick Gardenier the whole time. Which is such a novel thing that you don't see. It's not as sloggy as you would think, as long as you can take it for what it is. Just pulpy garbage with a Mary Sue protag.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just for the novelty alone, it's fun pulpy garbage. But it is total garbage. So, I think some guy named John Ringo did the writing with Larry Correia, only there to do make sure everything lined up with canon.
Yeah.
But yeah, the main series doesn't go into normal everyday monster hunting stuff, so you don't see any of that in the main series. You have to, unfortunately, go with Oliver, or Chad, as he's called, because he's obviously a Chad, although I think that was an accident.
He was a Chad.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been enjoying going through the series again. Nemesis is still just as good as I remember it being. Nemesis is still far and away the best book in the series. It's not even close. But, yeah, having a lot of fun going through that. And it's given me a proper perspective on current ongoings in the U.S. Well, it didn't give it to me, but it feels good with my proper perspective of things going on in the U.S.
Ah, no. Also, I feel like
So,
I just
yeah.
cheated in this mission I did.
So yeah, now we're done.
Okay.
That's all I did this week.
We actually have 2 emails.
Yeah, it's 2 emails
Because
from
they're
Seraphis
both
because
from
we're
Seraphis
bad.
'cause-
Good job.
We are terrible, and last week was such a blah that I kind of forgot entirely about it. Sue,
It's just the
who wants the
online.
first one?
I will read them because you two cannot be trusted with the English language.
I can't multitask that well.
It's not a question of multitask, it's a question of can you England?
No, I Australian.
Alright, so this email which was sent on January the 11th from Seraphis. Dear Ari, have you ever wanted to shoot Yanks, then spend 20 seconds reloading a smooth bore musket that might hit the broadside of a barn from 150 yards? Have you ever wanted to fill the battlefield with thick smoke so you can charge across and plunge your bayonet deeply into the northerner's chest? Well then, War of Rights for you. I picked it up during the sale, and to my surprise, it is actually fairly fun. Also, to my surprise, the CryEngine can host 150-player FPS battles, and those battles are fun and immersive. Commanders literally shout orders at soldiers. Hopefully you won't get the squeaky-voiced 12-year-old as the CO. Officers repeat said orders, you follow the flag bearer trying to outflank the enemy, all while the artillery turns people into red mist. The biggest problem with the game is the player count. Usually there is 1 full server, maybe 2 on weekends, but if you want some fun Civil War shooty action where you spend 80% of the match reloading, it's more fun than it sounds. Give War of Rights a try. Supposedly, cavalry and drummers are coming later down the line. Speaking of cavalry, I have no idea why little girls are so into horses, but then most of us boys are into stuff that have engines, cars, motorcycles, tanks, planes, warships. I'm fairly sure there's a podcast somewhere where the female hosts wonder what's wrong with us for liking those things. But hey, girls liking ponies is how we got MLP FIM. So we got that going for us, which is nice. And finally, I just remembered the urgent problem of not mentioning anything Doom related since Doom Returnal. Rectifying intensifies. As usual, with December we had our Whatever of the Year awards. Game of the Year awards in every category unsurprisingly went to Lesb of Us 2, where humanity will die out not because of fungus zombies, but because the girls think boys are icky. So after going to 2020 Kick Awards for the best Doom mods, I came to the following conclusion. This year's theme was the huge, sprawling, extremely detailed architecture slaughter map that takes hours to finish. Some of them have excellent combat choreography instead of just throwing 100 revenants and chain gunners at you. However, I also came across a set of levels called Alt, released in 2012. It grabbed me immediately because of the whole environmental storytelling angle it went for. The levels are varied, not too hard, and have some excellent puzzle segments. I highly recommend checking it out. There, Seraphis.
So yeah, I doubt War of Rights will remain around for very long at the rate culture's going, but I have looked at it before, and you are not the first person to recommend it to me.
Yeah, I've heard of this before, but I need to see some screenshots.
It's early access, and they're asking a $30 buy-in.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
That's the main thing stopping me from even picking it up for the memes. But
yeah, early access is a scourge.
You want to shoot some filthy colonials?
No, it's not colonials you're shooting. This is the Civil War, so you're
shooting. You can play on either side, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I will only be able to play on one side.
Well, you don't want to burn Georgia?
I mean, not that Georgia. Not particularly. I'm indifferent to that Georgia. I wasn't alive for that one. The current one, yes, and I want to build something else on top of it. But no, not right now. And Sherman was a absolute monster. I don't care what your history teacher thought they were telling you. Go read his own letters that he wrote.
He got a tank named after him. That means he must be a cool guy.
Yeah, he's a war criminal that should have been executed after the war. That dude was a monster. Just I'm not going to get into the politics of what Sherman did on this show, but burning farmland and killing women and children just to make a point and make the South, quote, demoralized, unquote, violates pretty much every human right out there.
Sounds pretty Mao to me.
So, yeah. It's something I've had an eye on just because, if for the memes, if nothing else, because her IR from Georgia. But it's early access game asking $30.
Yeah,
so,
although there's a few MMOs I'm keeping my eye on, and if you want alpha or beta access, you need to pay $100.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I might bite the bullet and would buy into it if I had people that already were playing it and wanted me to come play with them. But as a solo experiment to go poke it by myself, going in mostly for the memes, I don't see myself checking it out just yet. So there's that. And it's unfortunate that MLP hasn't died yet, because that took less than it was okay for about a year and a half, 2 years. But MLP got corrupted so fast.
About 3 or 4 seasons were good. Like, but the strongest content is in the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, and then it got
really spotty after even the first season.
Yeah, and the fandom and what happened to it.
Got weird.
It degenerated into the most, like, just another stereotypical fandom. It actually took longer than most.
Yeah,
it held out okay for a while.
You spend time on the Dingle Rumpus Reddit. Like, you can't talk about fandoms.
Yeah.
Well, the Dingle Rumpus Reddit is not talking about anything these days. They're just making jokes about how Miyu is a thought.
She is a thought.
She wishes.
But yeah. And Doom is Doom. Not my wheelhouse.
It is very doomy.
I find those extremely detailed maps problematic. Like, I don't think I've ever finished one. I can count on one hand the number of maps. Like, Ari is well acquainted with my inability to find the entrance to Sunken Temple.
Yes.
And Doom maps are worse. I can count on one hand the number of maps in the Plutonia experiment that I was even able to find my way to the end of. Some of them I wasn't even able to find my way to the end of using NoClip. Like, this is not. It can't just be that my sense of direction is that bad. But maybe I can't tell how much of an influence that is. But my experience with lengthy maps in Doom is mainly confined to Plutonia experiment, and I could not finish those maps. I just would get lost, and I'd end up going in circles for half an hour. Like, I couldn't do it. Like, I think the one that I tried over and over again was Odyssey of Noises, and I couldn't finish it. I'm just not good enough. I'm just not good enough at Doom. I could not finish that map. If I could turn on invincibility and ignore all the monsters, I still couldn't finish it.
Oh, that's worrying.
I'm bad at Doom, and I'm bad at finding my way around places. And the Doom map is not great. It's very, very two-dimensional. I know that the Doom engine limits you from having floors above other floors to a certain extent. Like, it pretty much can only build solids, but I don't know if that's still true. I know it was true when it was at its inception. You couldn't have a top floor on top of a bottom floor.
Yeah, just because of the way the map generator worked.
Yeah, that's why, all the lifts were solid objects, for instance. They weren't something that you could get off on a floor above the previous floor that you were on. That was not a thing. But I can't finish big Doom maps, and just the thought of attempting them gives me flashbacks to Plutonia Experiment. I think Plutonia Experiment was probably where I stopped really earnestly playing Doom, and then that came out goodness only knows how long ago. How long ago was that?
Let's not think about that, shall we?
I continued playing Heretic and Hexen, but I didn't continue playing Doom because Plutonia Experiment happened. And those I don't know what it was about them, but I couldn't finish them ever.
Came out in 1996.
Ugh, gross.
Childhood.
Yeah, like the only game that has replicated a similar but not quite the same level of confusion that Plutonia Experiment inspired in me was Quake 1. There are a few nightmare levels in there as well
Just
that I
because
also
every
couldn't find
castle
my way
is
through.
brown and looks the same.
It took me like 3 hours to finish the Dismal Oubliette. Like,
Yeah.
ugh.
Oh, that low gravity hidden map took me a while, largely because you'd press a button and something would open and you'd have absolutely no idea where it was. You'd have to search the whole level again.
Yeah, that was like there was no 3D audio back when Doom came out. So oftentimes it would be like you would hit a button, you would hear an elevator activate, but the only thing that it would change is like the volume because
Yes.
of it being far away. But you didn't know how far away and what direction. And then you just wander around the entire map waiting to see if you could find an elevator. Most of them worked automatically. They go up, they go down. They go up, they go down.
Yes.
And if you happen to walk past when it's in the same position that it is before you press the button, well, I mean, that's just too bad, isn't it?
That's a you problem.
I've dug up a map of the first level in Plutonia Experiment here that somebody made. That's a big map for a Doom level.
Yes.
Even without
Which one, Congo?
piece... Say what?
Which one, Congo?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
It says-
Congo. I think I might have figured out how to finish Congo in the end, but I was there for a long time before it happened. There are so many revenants in that level. Or at least I remember having nightmares of revenants in that level. Maybe there's only one for all I know, and I just kept getting shot at by it. But yeah, it was... Plutonia Experiment was the stuff of nightmares for 1996 me.
Yeah, it's I don't have anything for scale on these maps to see how long it takes to cross, but the reason Doom maps don't give me trouble is because they're usually small, because Doom maps all have a very similar look to them. So
Yeah.
I have to learn the twists and turns and make a mental spaghetti map in my head. And if the level gets too big, that spaghetti map starts having parts of itself erase, and things just kind of start falling apart. But
The one that I remember spending the most time wandering in circles on, though, was Odyssey of Noises.
All right, we've got to keep moving because time.
Okay, was there anything else in the email? Oh no, we'll just go to the next one.
Jump to next.
Yeah. And this is the one from January the 18th. Okay, dear No Excuses. Funny you bring up Hikikomori's last show because I have been playing Hikikomori. Now, some people would say this is Undertale meets DDLC. What's that? Doki Doki Literature Club?
Yeah.
They could be wrong. Omori couldn't be, but they would be wrong. Omori is more like Earthbound meets Yume Nikki. We have our black and white player character in a white room with a door. Said door leads to his friends, a bunch of colourful kids in a colourful and crazy world where they try to find their disappeared friend. Saying anything else would be spoilers, but the disclaimer at the start spoils enough already. It's not easy to figure out that something is very wrong. Bonus points go for Omori's portraits when you stack happy or angry more than once. The fight against the pink twin-tail duchess, who has a heart-tipped magical girl scepter that transforms into a spiked flail, and her boss music. The battle system is alright, but I got bored with the trash encounters by the end. The boss fights are more enjoyable with the whole emotion system, countering status effects and whatnot. The game clocked in around 20 hours for me, and I didn't explore a few entirely optional zones. Also, there is a fairly different playthrough that changes the story and the zones you visit if you want to be bleaked at some more. On a more happy note, I'm glad you lot managed to kick the Gacha Impact habit. That, or you are no longer talking about it. Unfortunately, I picked up a bad habit in the meantime, idle clickers. To make matters worse, two of from Salsa Singularity seems to be the one with actual production value behind it, having graphics and sound and music and multiple parallel tiers of clickiness that you start from scratch. Some interacting with others, some not, some using different systems, some not. But it's free to does that say free to pay or free to play?
Free to pay, probably.
Free to pay, and constantly tries to nickel and dime you for a boost I kicked it pretty quick. The other one has no sound or music and barely any graphics, but is completely free. In Space Travel Idle, you travel in space, obviously, battling aliens and meteors. Combat uses a card system that you can automate with AI through a simple condition action system. The one pitfall is setting out to a new planet without the recommended resources in the cargo. One might get stuck there for ages just building the launch site. Thankfully, the dev added an autosave before each blast off. Serathis.
So on that topic, actually, I do want to throw one under the bus and then set it on fire and feed it to the dogs. And that is Idle Hero, I believe it was called. There's currently having
Clicker Heroes.
No, this is a different one.
Okay.
But there's having a crossover with Persona 5 at the moment. So I was like, all right, I'm going to look in that, see what that's all about. And it is the most dull gameplay loop you could possibly imagine. It's, put your heroes on the field, they'll just fight, and when they charge up enough meter, you press a button. But what really says everything you need to know about this game is the what they're charging for Joker and Queen as heroes.
Oh.
They are charging $35 per hero.
Yeah, no.
But that is actually 75% off.
I'm pretty sure that's illegal.
That is very illegal.
You can't put something up for sale and then never sell it again once the promotion's over.
You also can't put something up for sale and just use tactic.
There's a law against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't put something on sale for its duration that it's in your store and then take it down.
That will actually get you prosecuted in a lot of countries.
Yes.
There is a law against presenting something as though it's on sale when it's not actually on sale because it's going to cease to be available once the sale period is over.
Yeah.
It has to be a genuine promotional price in order to be advertised as such.
Yeah, not the actual price that they're just pretending is a promotion.
Yeah, I think that's actually a law in your country, Fern.
It is most definitely a law in my country.
I think it varies by state here in the U.S.
What they're asking though is $35 for a JPEG. Well, okay, it's a GIF. Fine.
I play FGO. I'm not going to.
That is not a stone you can cast.
I'm not going to level any criticism at anyone.
So yeah, there's a few idle games out there which are they're enough to fun enough to have just something to keep your hands busy, but a lot of them are just absolute dreck.
I've talked about this before, but there are games that I have that fill particular slots. So I'll have a game that fills my idle slot, and I'll have a game that fills my MMO slot, which may or may not be an MMO. Monster Hunter also falls into that slot. Mm-hmm. It's just called MMO slot because it's the time sync, focused time sync slot. And I have games that will fall into my casual drop in drop out slot, which is usually Muso games. I don't really have space for idle games in my life because Gacha typically fills that.
Yeah, they're the game you play when you're not playing a game.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So I will just farm doors on FGO or something because at least that will accrue and it's the same type of activity to me.
Yep. Yeah. I will give... Well, I know it's just as bad because the monetization in these games is typically awful, but I do have a little bit of a soft spot for Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. Largely because it lets you put Minsk and Deacon together. So, yeah, if you want ham, that's how you get ham. All right. I can't
even envision those two bouncing off each other.
Yeah, unfortunately.
How does the interaction even go?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think they only throw out a couple of one-liners, and that's about it. But those two characters, I think, could actually just do a full comedy routine all on their own. It'd be great. But as for Omori, I've looked at it because it's been a Kickstarter game. It's only just came out, I think, the last couple of weeks. And I got serious Earthbound vibes from it. I think what I'll do is I'm going to watch a Let's Play of it. And just, watch someone else play it while I do something else. So, we'll see. But if something's going to come out and fill that Earthbound slot, then more power to it. Right. Anything else from the emails that you want to go on?
I think we covered pretty much everything. I closed my emails, so I assume we did. But yeah, thank you for the email, Serathus.
Yeah, sorry we didn't read it on time.
Yep, we'll be better next time.
No, we won't.
We say
Maybe we say that, but
That's a
I-
blatant lie.
I lack confidence in that declaration.
All right. So there are a few little newslets, and we got a little bit of time to go for. So who wants to pick something?
I just listed a bunch of arbitrary stuff
You
as
did.
jumping off points.
Ignore the meme
Um,
that I've stuck in the show host channel, please.
oh.
So the move that actually has people talking about it is Vicarious Visions moving to Blizzard Entertainment. Now, this isn't a new acquisition as such. This is they're already owned by BlizzActi. But Vicarious are now coming under the Blizzard umbrella. And basically Vicarious Visions is most likely going to be used as a spin-off engine.
Probably.
And the thing I've got mixed feelings about this. Number one, it's sort of sad to see a business just become a spin-off engine. But on the other hand, Blizzard's efforts in producing a remaster of Warcraft 3 were
I think we need
I'm
to make
trying
up
to
a
think-
new word for this.
I'm trying to think of an adjective which is appropriate. And I'm not quite sure what would do the trick. But yes, they were questionable at best and generally speaking extremely disliked. But
Yes. Oh.
But yeah, it's the thing that Vicarious Visions are most notable for recently is their remaster of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Yep.
And from all accounts, they were an incredibly faithful and incredibly good remaster of the original.
What else did they do?
Or
Back in the
remake of the
day, they
original.
did Crash Team Racing 2, I want to say?
Regardless, if there's
yeah.
if there's a Diablo 2 remake in the offing, and everybody's always talking about that, right? I would rather have Vicarious Visions do the remake than let Blizzard loose on that based on Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Yeah.
So that's the positive side of this. So even though they're going to be, basically enslaved to Blizzard now, that at least there's a chance that we won't get a completely appalling remaster of Diablo 2.
Yes, I mean, the Warcraft 3 remake was so bad it retroactively ruined Warcraft 3. Because you can't play it anymore. They deleted the original Warcraft 3.
It's fairly impressive in a way, just how everything about that thing was a bad idea.
Yeah.
I don't think a single good thing came of Warcraft 3 Reforged.
All they needed to do was give Warcraft 3 a coat of paint, and that was it.
Yeah, if you polled the entirety of the Warcraft 3 player base and made sure they were properly informed of everything the reboot did back in whatever year Warcraft 3 was popular in, and said, okay, you can keep the original game exactly as it is, or we can do this Reforged thing, I don't think you could find a single one that would say, yeah, do the Reforged thing.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would say, go for the Reforge.
It was just made everything terrible.
Yeah, just put the old game, adapt it to the StarCraft 2 engine if you must, and make it look prettier. That's all they had to do.
Yeah, all you had to do was hire out get that cutscene team working, remake your old cutscenes, maybe make them real pretty and get new models, and that's it.
That's about it. But
you can use the same voice acting. We don't care if it's in mono. Just oh my goodness, guys, how did they screw that up? I am worried though, because if I think it's been shown that Blizz Activision corrupts whoever they touch, so it may not matter how good Vicarious Visions is. If they wait too long to get this reboot project rolling, if they do one, it's just going to be another pile of garbage because Blizzard's going to have Blizz Activision's going to have Blizz Activision all over them.
Yeah.
And stuck them with whatever they think qualifies as oversight that makes everything terrible.
So that's that. We'll see what comes out of that. But if they've picked up that and that, yeah, maybe that does mean we'll get that Diablo 2 remake or remaster. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope, because Diablo 3, okay, they fixed a lot of the problems with it, but it's still tarred with that brush.
Yeah.
And admittedly, there's a lot of other things I don't like about it, like how they went about their character progression and things like that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Another company falls to the red juggernaut. Tencent has bought Clay. The guys who did Don't Starve and Oxygen Not Included.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Those guys.
They were fairly small.
They are. They're a very small
studio,
company.
weren't they?
Yep, but Don't Starve in its community is still ridiculously successful, and Oxygen Not Included is also an excellent game. And they both ooze charm. In Oxygen Not Included case, quite literally.
That's a grotesque image.
There's a lot of stuff that tends to ooze in that game, namely your colonists.
I see.
They tend to leak quite a lot. Ooh, level up. So yeah, it's a shame too because they just put out an early access new expansion for Oxygen. So yeah, well, guess we'll have to wait and see how they're going to ruin it. Because particularly with Don't Starve Together, that game has the potential to be monetized out the buttocks. But to date, it hasn't been. You can buy a couple of packs that let you get access to an additional character here and there, and even then, a lot of those come up as free eventually. So there's really no reason to spend a whole lot of money on it if you don't want to.
I see. But yeah, Tencent eating people. It's China.
China.
And anything that gets eaten completely by Tencent, I think we can write off as dead. Because they're gonna have to appeal to the Chinese government with everything they do. And so any hope of creativity goes out the window when the CCP's involved.
Well, they claim they've got independence and whatnot. And what I think that means is that they won't have to appeal to the government initially. It's just that as soon as they're basically going to be a means of generating revenue for the Chinese government until such time as the Chinese government takes more interest in them, at which point, well, all bets are off.
Yeah.
China.
You gotta say, it still has to take the stupid way. Alright.
It's the only way to say China, as far as I'm concerned.
Stupidly.
Which is unfortunate because I can't do it. Because nobody can
do
that.
it. Oh boy. Okay.
So let's see here. Gabe Newell gave a very cryptic interview. And by cryptic, I mean evasive interview, like all of his interviews. But the way he gave it was fairly funny this time. It was fairly funny this time. I laughed while I was reading it. So the interview goes on asking about things like how Alex went and what they're doing now and what's up with all the holdup in production of the Valve Index. And eventually they get to the important question, what about Half-Life 3? Or something equivalent. They don't list the question they asked explicitly. But Gabe's response to a question similar to that was, I've successfully not spoken about those things for a long time, and I hope to continue to not talk about them until they are moot questions. Then we'll move on to a new set of questions. The nice thing is, by not answering those questions, I avoid the community coming up with new and equally difficult questions. Just to be clear.
I'm sort of impressed by that. That response impresses me.
It is masterful. Although, I have to admit, I'm surprised it didn't happen this year, but that Santa Claus beard.
Yeah, Gabe's got a new old man beard that he's rocking that looks like Santa Claus's beard.
Yeah, so that's going to be a meme next year. You watch, or this year, I should say.
Yeah, and he further goes in with his Gabe trolly ways. Although Gabe really doesn't troll that much, he does it in ways like this. But I'm not sure I would call this trolling, just being Gabe. He goes, just to be clear, internally we have a bunch of different names and they change over time, ending that particular part of the conversation. They get into more asking about Half-Life Alyx, and he goes, we definitely have games in development that we're going to be announcing. It's fun to ship games. Alyx was great. To be back doing single-player games, that created a lot of momentum inside the company to do more of that.
He should go into politics.
You really should with the spin like that.
He's extremely good at saying a lot of words and actually saying very little.
So, of course, the world has taken all this to mean Half-Life 3 confirmed, but we'll see.
Because they always do.
Because everything is Half-Life 3 confirmed when it comes to Steam, and even some things that don't have anything to do with Steam and Valve. But we did actually finally get an explanation for why the heck the VR headset, the Valve Index, got a total kibosh put on its production. I'm not going to read his full quote, but basically, one of the components they needed for one of the pieces inside of it was manufactured exclusively in Wuhan.
Ah.
And that place is radioactive right now, and nowhere else makes anything appropriate.
No.
Or the place.
It's totally Australia's fault.
Yeah, or or the places that did were completely bought out of stock by Microsoft and Apple as soon as the hysteria started with the virus. So they haven't been able to get any parts to build anymore.
Ah, dear.
So that's what you get for using China.
Yeah.
Should have set up a factory with all your Steam money and given some American factory workers some jobs to make them yourself, Gabe. Obviously.
All right, we've got time for one more quick article.
The one which made a bit of fuss this week was Xbox price changes. Not so. Basically, they decided, we need to increase the price of our gold membership.
It is ridiculously cheap for what you get. I'll freely admit that.
Yeah, but the thing is, they've just launched a console.
Yes.
They want people to buy that console.
Yes.
What do you think the marketing value is in announcing in parallel with this? Actually, we're going to also increase the amount of money you need to pay to use all of these facilities with it. Now, this is just not how you do it. This is not how it works. I'm sorry.
I can see the conversation the marketing guy's having with his bosses with this, but I don't think it's good logic. They're going something like they've already bought into buying a new console.
No,
so
that's the argument that you have after people have. We're still in the launch phase.
Yeah, I think he's jumping the gun here on this too. He's got to be going, oh, well, we can just jack the price up because they're going to want to go all in after they've just bought a shiny new console. But I don't think that quite works when we're talking about products of the price point we're talking about.
No, you want to wait till like 2 years have passed or something, and 65% of the install base is already established or something like that. And then once people already heavily invested in the use of that product, you jack the price up. Because you got to keep in mind the scalping market is also massive right now on these new consoles.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So if somebody has just bought in and you piss them off, they can say, oh well, I might as well just turn a profit then.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this is just complete marketing kryptonite. Like, why would you do this? So they then turned around and released an update saying, okay, so this was a terrible idea, and we're just going to not do it now.
Yeah.
There's been a whole lot of people realizing feedback is entirely negative to decisions like this. Happens on YouTube, as you're foreshadowing.
The feedback was always going to be negative, but this is just a real bad time to do it because they've just gotten a whole bunch of these expensive devices into people's houses, and they're saying, okay, so now we're just going to ask you for a few extra shekels, and yeah, you'll be fine with that, right? You just gave us a huge pile of money, but it's okay if we ask for a little bit more.
Yeah. Just bad timing, especially when there's so many people out there who are holding their shekels in order to actually get one of these consoles.
I haven't actually been able to confirm this, but what I heard was that free-to-play games were going to end up being put in under the gold membership as well.
That's
Like,
actually in this article. It's just been updated.
Is it?
Yes, so they are doing that.
No, well, they were doing that.
They were doing that.
They were doing that, and they decided not to, I think, is the...
Yeah.
Like they were, because currently I think the status is that free-to-play games, they're free to play. You don't need to pay them money to play it even over the network because they're free to play.
Yeah. There must have been
they were intending to put that in under their membership fee so that even the free-to-play games, they weren't free anymore. You still needed to pay for the platform.
Yes.
So people that were already playing online games that were free to play with their friends would suddenly no longer be able to unless they could cough up that extra $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
This did not go down well with very many people, I'm here to tell you, based on what happened on Twitter.
We're in a crippled economy. These companies don't seem to realize that their perpetual profit, ever growing profit model that they need to keep investors ain't gonna function if you just shot the world economy in the head.
It's not only that, but like there are still people who are under lockdown and children who can't go to school, and they will have attached to particular entertainments over the course of time, and now what? You're just saying that, oh well, what you've gotten used to now, you're going to have to spend a little bit of extra dosh in order to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's not going to make a lot of people happy. And I'm just thinking, people don't have that much money to throw around. I imagine we'd have a much bigger automatic new console, new toy buy-in with the new consoles if we weren't in a completely shot economy. But we don't. People don't have money right now. People are worried about keeping their job if they even still have their job.
Mm-hmm.
People that do have a job probably aren't getting bonuses, pay raises at minimum, or have had to take a pay cut like me, because the markets are just dead. Yeah. You can't go asking people, okay, can you give us a little bit more money now? And expect them as your customer to go, oh yeah, that's totally okay. We already have all this money laying around, so a little bit disappearing won't matter. No, these people are looking for a job because the government just threw them all out of their jobs because of lockdowns.
Yeah. See, given how much I'm actually paying for Gold Live, I wouldn't say no to paying just a little bit more in a better financial situation. But yeah, it's not the time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to cut down on my subs down to almost nothing. I don't pay for subscriptions to pretty much anything. I pay for PSO2's premium sub, and that's about... And there's smaller things around, but I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. But most of my subscriptions got cut when the economy died. I can't afford to pay for more. If Microsoft did a price raise and I was still subscribed to Gold, I'd definitely consider cutting it.
Yeah.
If they raise the price, just because can't afford it right now.
Yeah, timing is everything.
So yeah.
All right, and with that, we should wrap up.
Yep. All right, folks. Y'all got anything for closing comments?
No.
No.
No. And this is what happens when you don't pay attention.
Yeah.
You end up face down in a filthy workshop puddle.
I'm part of the 1% in PSO2 now. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, and you got to spend it all on skimpy costumes.
Yep. Well, I spent 20 million of it on PA Technique fragments to level my crafting up.
What did you sell to acquire your filthy lucre?
I sold a augment that just dropped as a raw augment that you can affix when you're enhancing weapons. With the,
I think I have one of those, but I think it's also aggressive will.
Yeah, it was some S4 augment from the new holiday quest. That's really rare. So I pawned that off for like 85 million. So I had briefly over 100 million Meseta.
Nice.
And sold a whole lot of Desert Croquets. Because they're part of an event quest right now. And nobody has the materials to make them, because it takes like 20 potatoes from the abandoned mine and a bunch of crustaceans from the desert, which are the rare catch.
Alright.
So yeah, there's that. Alright. So I think that's all we got for the show, unless y'all got anything else.
No, that's it.
I'll be on time next week. I'll remember that we're back in standard time. I don't know why I forgot it this week. I do not know why that happened. I just thought, oh, I still got like 45 minutes. No. Daylight savings time is over. Yeah, it was today. I was just locked on energy, so I'm gonna blame it on being tired. I'll remember next week. All right, folks. We'll see you then. Sayonara. Bye bye.